Please note that this video contains manga spoilers for the recently released chapter 138. If you've read the recent chapter, you know we are in the end of the Attack on Titan endgame. Yes, more like that very final fight you get in the final arc of any manga. And it might be a little downgrade to go from a war between two anti-hero parties to good guys versus the big bad guy, but the tension remains still the same. And why do I say that? Because of the mystery. Even though many character arcs and story arcs slowly found a way to the end, there are still many mysteries lurking in the story. Who's the father of Historia's child? How does the newborn child tie into the main story? What is Ymir's end goal? And is there any way of reverting the events and massacres that have happened? These questions are what urges us to keep reading the chapter, but this video isn't about such a mystery. Well, you can surely tell the chapter did solve the mystery of what the first panel meant, but that's not what I want to speak about here. I want to speak about the character of Mikasa and how much this chapter focused on her. It seems Isayama has finally done justice to the main heroine, and the way her character arc ends is up to us to interpret.
やるよこれあったかいだろ
Let's first start talking about the origins of this bizarre Mikasa-Eren relationship. It started off when Eren first rescued Mikasa from the kidnappers, and even though she only saw him as her savior at that moment, Mikasa later adopted romantic feelings for him. This was obvious in the later arcs of the manga, and was a focal point in the last episode of the second season, but then from season 3, Mikasa took a back seat. This is what I like to call the drowning arc. Basically, what it means is that as the story continues with more arcs and introduces more characters and story events, the old characters slowly sink to the bottom. And Mikasa didn't sink to the bottom, but instead I felt as if she didn't get much attention as a main character. The first part of the third season was all about Historia and Levi. The second part was about Erwin, Grisha, and even Kruger. And the fourth season was about Marley's warriors and everyone's favorite character-killing maniac, Gabi. With the introduction of these new faces and new story arcs, the old characters, Mikasa, Armin, Jean, Connie, and even Eren took a back seat. But fortunately, Eren took back the main character's mantle as he began pulling plot twists with each chapter, but the rest of the people transformed to just, pardon the pun, bystanders. The ones who stare at the events happening without contributing to it. But then came the final arc, and I feel the final arc was like a tribute to all the characters of the manga. Isayama shined the spotlight on each of the Alliance members, and even gave story arcs for characters like Connie and Jean, and the pattern continued until 138, where our main heroine finally got the spotlight she deserved. A summary of the situation is unnecessary. I'm sure you all remember the events leading up to the confrontation between Mikasa and Eren. What matters in the end though is that it's up to Mikasa to land the final blow. Of course, fans who read the story in a more analytical way surely saw this coming. Why? Let me explain. So let's move back to our main trio's conversation back in season 4. Yes, the infamous "I've always hated you" conversation. Here Eren calls Mikasa a slave and insults her for being a slave for her entire life. And even though the facts he said about Ackerman's being protective is wrong, I can clearly understand what Eren's going for here. Mikasa had been tying her existence around Eren this entire time. She wasn't just an overprotective big sister, but like a parasite whose life depended on Eren. This was foreshadowed back in the very first arc of the manga after Eren's death. Mikasa goes around killing Titans aimlessly without knowing a purpose in her life. For Mikasa, as long as Eren exists, protecting him is what matters. When Eren dies, she transforms to this empty husk with no ambition or goals. You can see how the equation goes here, right? So what if we change the equation? Yep, and that's exactly what Isayama did. How can you make this girl's life more miserable? How about instead of letting her live without what she cares about, she's forced to kill the very person she cares about? Yeah, I know. It's one of those cruel Isayama moments where he inflicts the best pain and torture on his characters. But if you look at it from a certain perspective, you can also call this her character arcs. Imagine if someone else killed Eren, then would Mikasa have regrets? Yes, she surely would. She'd have the regret of not being able to protect the ones she loves, or not having the skill or the strength to save him.
Arumi?
But what if she was the one to kill Eren? Then clearly she wouldn't be doing it with regrets. She'd have a firm resolve, a firm moral compass, and only then would she lose all ties with him and raise the blade. And that's just the summary of this chapter. What Mikasa sees in her dream is an ideal future where she gets to live with Eren, but at the cost of Paradise's freedom. It's what she wants, but it's not what Eren wants. And I think this is the moment Mikasa realized that both her and Eren are walking in different paths. It's the moment that fixed her resolve to kill Eren. And don't misinterpret this situation as something Mikasa did because she felt angry towards Eren's actions. She did this because she no longer feels as a slave to Eren's feelings. Back in Season 1, if Eren told Mikasa to kill for him, she'd do it in an instant. Don't forget that scene in Season 1 where Mikasa was ready to kill an entire army just to prevent Eren from dying. But now she cares more about what happens around her rather than focusing on Eren. If the old Mikasa saw this dream, she would only tighten her bond with Eren, but this new version of Mikasa is different. I think the chapter summed up her character perfectly. Imagine a girl being a slave to someone, or literally tying her existence around that one single person, and then coming to terms with the relationship, slowly shattering bonds and starting to make her own decision. Need all of that in one word? Independence. Or as we all know it, freedom. Now I don't need to repeat it, because as we know, freedom is the main theme of Attack on Titan. And what's so interesting about this is how the show dives deep into the various aspects of freedom. And one of these aspects is individual freedom. This is the type of freedom to think and act on your own. Mikasa at the very beginning rarely had her own thought process, since most of her goals and ambitions revolved around Eren. And as I mentioned before, this also gave her the mindset, if Eren does something, that's the right thing. So what's Mikasa's character arc? She slowly steps away from the shadow of Eren and starts to grow on her own. Looking back now, you might also say this was what Eren wanted to accomplish. That Ackerman's being a slave theory might be one he built up on his own, but in the end, his goal might have been to force Mikasa to make her own decisions. And I'm saying might because we're still not sure of Eren's end goals, and we need to wait till chapter 139 to draw a clear conclusion on Eren Yeager's thought process. But from what we've read so far, we can clearly tell Mikasa's character arc came to a successful conclusion. Sure, it might not be complex as other characters, but what matters is the emotionality and tragedy revolving around her character. Imagine killing the very person you love from your very own hands. She might not have any regrets, but that means now she'll be walking in a path of loneliness and isolation. So if you look beyond her simple character arc, all those Necrogasa memes running in the community, what you'll find is the tragedy of one woman. Isayama said he planned on giving the manga a sad ending, and I think what he meant by this wasn't his goal to kill all the main characters, but to make sure they suffer a lot from their own actions. So hats off to Mikasa for finally having to sacrifice the one thing she loves for the greater good, and I don't regret saying this, she's still the best girl of the show. So there goes my take on chapter 138 of Attack on Titan. Have you noticed the pattern? Chapter 137 ended off with a panel of Armin, chapter 138 ended with a panel of Mikasa. So you can keep your hopes up about who the man holding the child is in chapter 139. But this is just a guess, and this is Attack on Titan, so we desperately need that thing called hope. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to drop a like and subscribe for more analysis and character breakdown videos like this. That's it for today, Jaegerists, and I'll see you in the next video.